welcome to the Engerati studio live at European Utility Week. I'm Rose and I'm joined now by Stephen Hall, partner at Baringa Partners. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Much of the talk at this event is about energy revolution, and much of that rhetoric assumes that consumers will be taking an active role. What's your take on this?
So, from our perspective and from my personal perspective is that prosumers do play an integral role, firstly, in the energy revolution. If we take a look at where prosumers are at the moment, it's quite divided. So within the industrial and commercial market, where organisations, so the traditional customer organisations, whether it's large pan-European or even global organisations who have a large energy portfolio and therefore large energy costs, as well as a green agenda associated with their corporate social responsibility, we've already seen a number of organisations, big organisations, become prosumers. So whether that's installing on-site generation, whether it's them leveraging the various technologies that have come to market, including solar, heat pumps, etc. So our observation is that the prosumers are active in that market. In the domestic market, however, there's not a great deal of traction. We think that actually the start of prosumerism within the domestic, within the residential, could start and is starting with the installation of smart meters. So one of the reasons why the domestic market hasn't actually made progress is because, to be honest, a lot of people just aren't engaged with energy. So trying to advise them on let's install some solar panels, because one, it's good for the economy, the transition to a low carbon economy. Two, it may or may not cut your energy bills. People just are ambivalent, really. Yeah. So I think we've got a long way to go in the domestic market, but I do think that the activity across the European smart metering rollouts are a good catalyst to actually start that journey.
Yeah. Do you think some of the problem may be because the customer hasn't been at the centre of kind of product development or service development? It's been more utility, I have this need, I'll offer this service because I need it to work for me, but the customer actually doesn't want it.
No, I think
it's relevant.
If I'm honest, if we actually look over the energy market over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of liberalisation and a lot of kind of carving up of the market. I think, firstly, organisations have been focusing on that. I think the second thing is historically there's been margin to be made in selling commodity, so selling the kilowatt hour. So I think that's been the focus. That's been the focus of the incumbent market participants. So I don't think there's really been a need per se to actually focus on overcomplicating their service offerings to the end consumer. Neither do I think that over the last 20 years, for example, in that time period, that energy customers have been focused on the transition to low carbon economy. Okay, so I think if you kind of take those two things, so if you actually look at what the customers have been interested in, and back to my point around a lot of customers are quite ambivalent or disinterested or not engaged with energy, and then you actually look at what the incumbent market participants' focus has been on, there's not really been a need. But where we find ourselves now, with reducing margins in the commodity markets, and then you see
motivating.
And then you see government legislation, carbon emission target reduction, etc. All of a sudden, it's woken people up on both sides of the fence to actually say, we need to do something different.
Okay, and that's an interesting distinction you made at the beginning, the commercial industrial prosumer compared to the residential.
Yes.
I mean, presumably that is the kind of sweet spot, is it, for utility? That's where you can see the most savings or potentially an easier customer to sell services to.
It's a really good point, because the prosumers, the organisations that have become prosumers on the industrial and commercial scale, the majority are the ones who have got hundreds of £millions worth of energy costs. Because actually moving to becoming a prosumer, becoming a self-generating organisation, it is marginal benefit. So
Okay.
you're not looking at 25% energy cost reduction. It's single digit percentage, but across an energy portfolio of up to £1 billion globally, that's bottom line profit. So in absolute terms, it's worth doing. However, where we find ourselves, so we've kind of seen that progress, but actually what we're now finding is where organisations, let's say, have an energy portfolio of tens of millions, a lot of people are actually looking and saying, well, the overall benefit, financial benefit, the financial business case to becoming a prosumer, it could be a couple of £1 million worth of benefit, versus the operational risk, the effort to actually become a prosumer. A lot of people are saying, well, around the board, the CFO will say, I don't think this is an initiative we should necessarily invest in. However, the thing that's swaying it is actually the brand value. The brand value associated with environmental and societal benefits. And if you have an executive group who truly believe in their CSR and green agenda, then what we're seeing, and a lot of the advisory work that we do, what we're seeing is that's actually creating the tipping point. That's actually, if I've got a almost net neutral benefits case, some organisations are taking on the operational risk and taking on the effort to become a prosumer because they believe it's the right thing to do, and for their shareholders and for their supply chain.
It's interesting, isn't it? I know that's a trend that's been picked up in the US. It's almost the corporate kind of pressure now on the utilities saying, I want to do this, how can you help me do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just coming back to Europe, when are we likely to see, thinking about residential again, when are we likely to start to see some kind of critical mass of prosumers?
So, it's a very good question, and unfortunately I cannot give you a binary response, but let me provide some information on that. What we are seeing in the domestic and kind of small to medium enterprise markets is we've seen some trials, and we've seen some trials predominantly where air conditioning, so certainly kind of certain parts of Europe, certainly not within the UK, but maybe in a kind of more business context. People are doing trials whereby they're offering their consumer, look, kind of an all-you-can-eat tariff. So I'm going to set you a fixed price, and you can use as much energy as you want. But what I want you to do is give me control of your, let's say, your air conditioning unit systems, whereby based on unlocking flexibility, and this is where the utility makes the money, is being able to reduce the temperature of an air conditioning unit on a large scale to actually provide flexibility and then sell that service back to an ancillary market or a balancing market. So the thing is, you need lots and lots and lots of customers to do that as a participant, so either as a demand side management or a demand side response aggregator. To do that, you need at a domestic level, a customer base in the probably millions.
Okay.
That not only do you just need the customer base, you need them to engage in that. So it comes back to the amount of effort you need to provide, and back to the point that we said, we're only getting to the point whereby we're starting to get engagement from the domestic market just in energy per se.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the energy market has been through quite a lot of brand and trust challenges. The banks went through it, energy companies are going through it. So you actually think, if I was an executive and I was thinking, that could be a potential service offering, I'm going to diversify away from just selling a kilowatt hour. Sounds like a great service, but signing up millions of customers, actually, why don't I just keep playing in the I and C market, and I'll do some on-site generation activities and helping them hedge their commercial position, and it's only a single number of customers rather than having to sign up. So I think back to the point, when will we see it? I think there'll be two success factors that I think will actually determine that. I think firstly it's the customer engagement. So as we actually continue to transition to a low carbon economy, do we naturally see humans becoming more engaged with energy? And the example I give is recycling. So if you cast your mind back 15 years ago, to go recycling, you had to get in your car and you had a bottle bank and the brown bottles and the white bottles. There was a lot of effort.
Yeah.
It was the only people that did that were the people who were highly engaged in recycling. Then we went through the complexity of local authorities giving blue bins, white bins, red bins, and you had 5 bins, and that was a lot of effort, so people didn't do it. Now what we've done is we've moved that effort away from the consumer, the customer, and now we have recycling plants that do the auto shifting of the different plastics, etc. So we've moved the effort away from the customer, and now everybody recycles.
Yeah.
But if you'd have asked somebody 10 years ago, they say, well, it's just too much of an effort. So I think firstly from a prosumer transition, it's really about how do we actually get customers, individuals, humans, the general populace engaged. The second bit is, the word that I use there is effort. Utilities and new market participants, if they're going to play in the prosumer market, they need to take the transition effort away. Okay, the transition effort away, whereby, back to the decision, we've made a decision around the board, we think it's a go, there's a lot of effort, but actually I've got a third party who says, don't worry about the effort, all you focus on is running your business and we'll take care of it. It's taking the effort away, and I think that's something that the services and the propositions that we're already seeing in the market from a number of organisations, where they've been successful, is they've actually achieved taking
the effort away from the utility as well as from the customer?
No, the effort away from the customer.
From the customer?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's no degree of penalty involved for the customer?
There's no penalty, the kind of perceived risks is managed, you just continue, whatever organisation you are, you continue doing your business as usual, even though you might have a lot of on-site generation plan. What you don't want to do is then start setting up an internal energy organisation, because that's not what you do. That's not your key focus as a business. So why not actually outsource that to someone that is their key focus? So I think that's going to be those two things. I think the customer engagement and the education, and then packaging services that take effort away from the customer, will be the success factors.
I mean, just to draw on the recycling analogy, obviously it's a generational thing as well. You know, I'm sure a lot of adults will say their children will pick them up if they don't recycle. Oh, Mum, you've got to recycle. So is it a kind of a waiting game as well for those younger consumers to come through?
I think there are many reports outside of our industry and inside of our industry about what millennials want from either careers or what they want from their life, and I think the CSR and green agenda is at the top of their agenda. Whereas you go back 20 years, back to using that 20-year time frame that I gave earlier, people weren't there. It just wasn't that. So. I wouldn't like to think it's a waiting game, because that kind of says it shifts focus, everybody's on somebody else. It's always somebody else's problem. But if we actually look at the macro level journey that we're all on the transition to low carbon economy, I think we've already made progress. Yeah. And I think it's something that we just need to collectively work together as an industry to make sure that where we do see a rise in engagement and the millennials do have families, etc., is that as a very minimum as an industry we can provide services that make it as easy as possible for them to transition to a prosumer.
Interesting. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for your insights today.
Thank you.
And you can watch more interviews from European Utility Week on the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching today.